And welcome at the webinar on integrate CRA risk assessment into automated defects workflows. Thank you for taking the first time and participating. My name is Alexander Henschke. I'm the sales manager at ONEKEY, and I will make the introduction, and then I will hand over to my colleague Sebastian Schneider, who is customer success engineer at ONEKEY, who will be talking about the main part of our seminar, the tech talk, and at least we have a question and answer panel. So please put all your questions in the live storm question tab in the lower right corner. So why product cybersecurity and compliance? In general, we have three big challenges. On the one side, millions of connected devices. On the other side, cyber criminals, but also state-funded hacker groups with seemingly unlimited resources. And the regulations like the upcoming Cyber Resilience Act, the RED Radio Equipment Directive, or the IEC 62443. So what do we need to do? We need to know what is inside our software. We need a secure software supply chain, an ingredients list of which software components are we using in our product, an SBOM, software bill of materials. An accurate SBOM is important for following tasks on the product cybersecurity journey, and it is influencing how successful vulnerability and compliance management will be handled in your company. So what we are doing, ONEKEY is a platform where you can do all that in a highly automated way, saving time and resources. We generate an SBOM from binary image in minutes instead of days. We check for vulnerabilities and reduce the number of false positives through an automated impact assessment. We monitor your product over the full product lifecycle 24/7 and tell you if your product is compliant or not. All this as a software as a service with easy integration in your existing workflows or CI/CD pipeline with our API first approach. So let us have a look to the compliance topic. Our compliance wizard is our latest feature, will be a true game changer, as it guides you through the complex way of product certification. The technical analysis is already automated, while we are continuously improving it to automate as much as possible for any regulations there is. The EU Cyber Resilience Act self-assessment, for example, will be managed completely over the platform, or the IEC 62443, the RED directive, or any other guidelines. But we have a hybrid approach. We try to automate as much as possible. If we do have limits, this is where our professional service comes in, supporting with gap assessments, pen tests, code reviews, etc. So yeah, that's it from my side. Let's move on to the main part. So Sebastian, the stage is yours. And keep in mind, if you have any questions, please put it in the question tab in the lower right corner.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex, for the kind introduction. Let me quickly share my screen. Yeah. Hello, welcome. My name is Sebastian Schneider. And today we want to talk about the Cyber Resilience Act and how to actually factor in risk management into an automated DevSecOps workflow. Before we start, let me quickly introduce you to one of our projects, the Cracovia project. Cracovia was awarded by the Digital Europe program, and the goal of this project, by the way, Cracovia stands for Cyber Resilience Act Compliance Wizard. And the goal is to develop and improve our compliance wizard to really guide you through the self-assessment. Our target audience here are small and medium enterprises, and we want to automate the full process and also give you actionable advice when we see any point where you need improvement in your compliance checks. We are not alone in this Cracovia project. We are collaborating with 14 different project partners all over Europe, different kinds of industry. We also have a notified body who helps us to develop the testing and certification scheme. and the other partners will validate the compliance wizard within different use cases. If this sounds interesting to you, please feel free to visit the project website at krakowi.eu. So, having said this, let's jump over to the main part. We have here a timeline for the Cyber Resilience Act. You see here now we are in February 26. You see what happened previously. The Cyber Resilience Act is already into force, but not all the requirements are actually mandatory for projects. The next milestone that we are seeing is in the summer. So here the notified bodies have to get ready with a certification scheme to be able to make assessments for products with digital elements. Then in September 26, there will be the first noticeable requirement, and this is a vulnerability reporting obligation. So this doesn't mean you have to report all vulnerabilities that might affect your product, but vulnerabilities that are actually used to target your product, to attack your products, and so at the same time your customers. This kind of vulnerabilities must be reported, and all cyber incidents that might affect the product security or the security of your products might be attacked on your organization, that might affect vulnerability, your development, or things alike. And then at the end of next year, there will be the essential cybersecurity requirements. So all the requirements that are mentioned by the Cyber Resilience Act must be fulfilled by products that are placed on the EU market. And that's very important. It is really a per piece requirement. So it doesn't count if your product line was already sold on the EU market before the state, but every individual piece of your product that will be sold after the state must be compliant with the Cyber Resilience Act requirements. I wanted to say it is impossible to sell non-compliant products after this, but this is very German thinking. Of course, it is possible, but it is not allowed to sell non-compliant products. In the meantime, there are some other milestones. So there will be horizontal standards that will specify in more detail which requirements must be fulfilled and how to accomplish these requirements. And in August this year, there will be 2 horizontal standards. So horizontal standards are for all products with digital elements, regardless from which domain. Then there will also be vertical standards that are for special kinds of products. So for example, there will be vertical standards, especially for antivirus, for VPN connectors, for key stores, and so on. But the horizontal standards will be relevant for all kinds of products. And this standards number 1 and number 15 will exactly describe how to do a proper risk assessment for the products and how to actually do the vulnerability management to be compliant with this reporting obligation. Then 2 months later, we will have the vertical standards for this individual product groups. And then in October next year, all horizontal standards will be released. And you see there is only a 2-month period between the final requirements and the release of the standard. So really my recommendation, start early, start now to implement cybersecurity. And I think this online seminar will give you some good guidance where to start and how to start to be compliant when this requirements hits you. If you want to have a more current view on where the different standards standardization process is, you can visit the German BSI. There's a standardization dashboard, and you can see in which state the different standards are. So, for example, we see the vulnerability handling. Here is already the third one from the top is already released for voting. So it was published as a pre-release. Everyone could comment on the standard. I think the commenting period ended 3 days ago, and now they will review the standard, will review the comments, and yeah, factor in the changes if necessary. So when you already have a product with digital elements, or actually any product that is placed on the EU market, you might already have this CE sign printed on the product, and you already have your declaration of conformity. And here are some standards and regulations you already have to comply to. There's a low voltage directive that says that your product isn't allowed to do any harm or electrocute your users. The electromagnetic compatibility directive, the restriction of hazardous substances, which also includes to use, for example, lead-free solder, and to not have some poisonous substances in a product. If your product is somehow radio connected, so if it has an antenna and also is capable to use network protocols over this wireless connection, then you have to comply not only with the radio equipment directive, but also with the cybersecurity requirements from EN 18031. And then in future, after 27, there will also be the Cyber Resilience Act requirements, which you have to comply to when you want to put a CE sign on your product. So looking here at a traditional product lifecycle, usually you start with a new product with a planning phase. You define exactly what this product should do. Perhaps you do in initial risk assessment based on the use cases that you plan for a product. You then start to design the architecture, perhaps already have some security and compliance factored into the solution. You're actually building a product that is then made ready for release. You have your final validation and testing. You ramp up the production, and that's usually the point where a CE sign is also placed on the product, where you have your declaration of conformity ready, and then the product enters an active phase. It is deployed. It is used by your customers. Perhaps you have already some monitoring. You get some usage data back, or you get feedback through your support how this product is used. Speaking of which, of course, you have to offer support and maintenance for a product. Perhaps you already deploy some security patches over the lifetime. And then finally, we hit the end of life. This could be twofold. So, for example, for individual device, how to decommission a device, how to delete user data and configuration data from a device before putting it out of use. And of course, end of life for an entire product line. So how to phase out the product. And traditionally, we could separate it into the left side pre-market and the right side aftermarket. But as you know, this is a very old school approach, and we are much more agile right now. And no product is ever completely ready or done. We always want to add new features. And so that's where this DevOps life cycle comes into play. And we have actually the same stages here, but folded into this infinity loop. Um, and on the left side, we have the development phase, and on the right side, we have the operational phase. And to keep up with this speed that you can gain by these processes, um, the key element is automation. And we at ONEKEY have fully understood this. So you see here a page from our documentation that we really factored in this automation part. So we have an open source Python client that can be used to integrate our platform. The entire platform is developed API first. So everything that you can do via UI can be automated through our API. We have great examples for integration into CI/CD pipelines, but also, for example, how to generate tickets in your favorite ticketing system like Jira or GitLab issues if a new vulnerability is found by our platform. So now to make a DevSecOps lifecycle out of this DevOps cycle, we need to add additional, how to say, additional activities to our traditional processes. So during the planning phase, and remember, the planning phase is not just before you develop a product, but it is repeating every time you plan a new release with new features. This planning phase repeats, and you should factor in threat and risk identification based on the new features. But of course, every time you should also look if the threat landscape evolved. So are there new attack types that could also affect your product, and how to react on this? To get you started, I would recommend to look, for example, into MITRE ATT&CK. They have a very great, very good framework that not only lists typical attack techniques and patterns for corporate networks, but also for industrial automation and control systems. So if your product is remotely used in such an environment, to look at this MITRE ATT&CK patterns to learn more about how real-world attacks against this kind of systems are carried out. Then there's also the MITRE embed framework. And this is a really handy framework. It is a property-based threat mapping or threat modeling tool. So you can select properties that fit to your product. For example, does the product have a processor, external memory? Does it use a bootloader? Does it have a kernel, and so on? And based on the properties that you select, you will get a extensive list of different threats that are typical for products with this kind of properties. But that's not all. You not only get the list of threats, but you also get mitigations. And together with these mitigations and external references, you also get a link to, for example, IEC 62443. So you directly see on which of the IEC 62443 requirements this mitigation would pay on. But of course, you also should do something like threat modeling on your own. So not only looking at the properties, but also on the real world use cases and connections. To get you started there, you could look at the OWASP threat modeling process. They have a very good process description, how to carry out such a threat model. And this would definitely include to have a data flow diagram. So you map out which different processes are active in your system. Here, for example, firmware over-the-air update, a web server. We have the OS as a complex process, internal memory. We map out which connection we have here between these internal processes. We see external entities who is using this processes. So the update server is talking to firmware over the air, the user is talking to the web server, and of course we need trust boundaries. So every time a connection crosses such trust boundary, you should be extra cautious and ask yourself what could go wrong, what kind of attacks could be carried out within this connection. But another very valuable outcome of your threat model is identification of critical processes. So here for an example, perhaps you're using SW Update for firmware updates, Lighty as a web server, and OpenSSL as your TLS library. And these are really critical processes. And here again, automation is key. We have a screenshot from our platform, and we have two automated rules. So when we have a product labeled with product A, and in one of the components, Lighty, SW Update, or OpenSSL, will be a vulnerability with the attack vector network. We want that this vulnerability is highlighted or with a focus rule, and we can also add a comment that our threat model identified these components as critical and network exposed. Please triage first. So this is really to focus your attention on this kind of vulnerabilities where you already know these are critical components, and to inform your security team here, look at this first. At the same time, you might identify components that are not exposed. There is no possible attack path. They're not connected to the network, or some other way to reach them from the outside. So, for example, SQLite or BusyBox could be such a component. And here we have an automated rule that we say when we have a network-based attack on this component, we simply accept the risk, and we have a comment here that our system analysis identified these components as not network connected. Could be a very good starting point, and it really increases your speed and saves you lots of time to be able to have such an automation in your triage process, so that you don't have to do this assessment over and over again for different firmwares, but you can really capture your decisions here and automatically apply them. Then security by design and default. This is really relevant for development and planning phase. And to get you started here, you could definitely look into IEC 62443, especially part 4-2, which has security requirements for devices in industrial automation and control systems. So really security features that could be relevant for this kind of devices. And the EN 18031 -1, which is actually the security requirements from Radio Equipment Directive, but we can be pretty sure that these both standards will be a template for the cybersecurity requirements in the Cyber Resilience Act. And also, as a side note, the 18031 will also be factored into the Cyber Resilience Act, because it is not planned to have two competing standards, cybersecurity standards for products on the EU market, regardless if they are just with digital elements or somehow radio equipped. But there are also other sources. So you could look into the OWASP Secure Product Design cheat sheet, a very good overview and getting started to get this idea what actually does secure by design mean. And a very good read is here the CISA, the Critical Infrastructure Security Agency from the US, which has released a series of white papers, and here especially the principles and approaches for secure by design software. Really a recommended read for getting into this topic. Again, our platform supports you to automate this analysis. So here, for example, we say that a scan of a Raspberry Pi firmware detected hard-coded account passwords, which would be surely a violation of secure by design principles. We also find things like hard-coded keys, expired certificates, and so on. So here again, we support you to really verify that your security by design activities are successful. Next topic would be vulnerability management. And this is relevant not only for the development phase, but also for the operational phase of a product. Vulnerability management could include things like static application security testing. So if you have already static code analysis in place, definitely keep it up, use it as much as possible. Dynamic application security testing could include things like fuzzing, so hitting your external interfaces with random data to see how your application reacts. But of course, also explorative testing using things like attack proxies or also to test your application or penetration testing. Then you should have a solid software composition analysis and dependency management in place because you need this transparency that comes with an SBOM, which is the output of a software composition analysis for proper vulnerability scanning. You can't scan for known vulnerabilities if you don't know which components are part of your product. Here again, our platform supports you. We not only do an automated software composition analysis based on the binaries that you upload to our platform, but we also check for known vulnerabilities or CVEs in these components. Here you see we show you the severity, we show you about the attack vector, so on which ways a vulnerability could be attacked. And for example, if there is already a known exploit, here in the exploit maturity, we see two CVEs that already have a proof of concept exploit and one functional exploit, which would mean that it is, for example, listed in the exploit DB. So security validation and testing, definitely relevant for your testing phase. And this means that you should enable your testing team to not only do the functional testing and check that all the usual features and functionality are in place, but also that the security function work as intended. So for example, if you have an authentication mechanism, they should check that it is active and in place for all endpoints. Automated security testing will also be part of your testing, and my recommendation is automate as much as possible to speed up this testing and verification process. So you could, for example, do simple things like port scanning in an automated manner for every release to get an alarm when your product suddenly has a new open port that was not expected, or add some things like TLS scanning to check if you have encrypted network or network encryption in place to check that only recommended ciphers are used, that your certificates are valid, and that you do a proper certificate checking there where it is appropriate. And then, of course, manual pen testing. Perhaps you have the resources to build these capabilities within your own organization. to do some basic pen testing, but of course, you should also have external pen testers that verify that all your implementations are really safe and secure. Here you see how we can again support you with some automated testing. So when we scan a firmware, we are not only looking for known vulnerabilities, but actually we have, I think the last time I counted, it were over 52 different security checks that we run over a firmware. We can find things like SQL injections, command injections. It is an extensive list. Here just an XC. Yeah, conformity and compliance. So I said I want to show you what is additional. So traditionally, this was only in the pre-market phase, and then you are compliant when you place a product on the market. Now it is about staying compliant. And this is, yeah, for all the operational phases now also relevant. What do I mean by this? Vulnerability monitoring must be carried out through the entire life cycle of the product. And then, of course, when the monitoring shows you there are vulnerabilities that can't be triaged away, you must need to you need to think about patch deployment. So the product must be updatable, of course, that's the first requirement, but then you need a process how to deploy those patches to your customers or perhaps automatically on the device. And you need a coordinated vulnerability disclosure process. So here it is not about informing your customers, but more about how can you take in security information from external entities. So perhaps you have a form on your website or a contact email address security at your domain where your users, perhaps if your users carry out an pen test on their own and they have some findings, how could they inform you about those findings? Or if there's a security researcher out there looking at your products, you need to provide some contact information, how they can reach out to you. And of course, you should also include a security policy to be very transparent on how you will handle this, the information you receive over this way. Here again, small screenshot from our platform for a firmware where we enable the monitoring. You see this button here. So monitoring means that we rescan the firmware and on a daily basis. And you see really that CVEs are a moving target. So on the latest scan we see here, we have 3 additional vulnerabilities. The day before it were 15, and then it was even 42 new vulnerabilities. So even if your components are not changed, there will be new vulnerabilities basically on a daily basis. So that really shows you need resources to do the vulnerability scanning, to do the triage, to look into this vulnerabilities, if they are affecting your product, if they are relevant for you. And my recommendation is to have a platform or a partner that really automates this process for you, so that your security team doesn't get into alert fatigue and just give up because they can't handle the flood of new vulnerabilities. Then we have the topic of documentation and traceability, and this is actually relevant for all the phases of the DevOps lifecycle. So you need to do the assessment of the cybersecurity risk, of course, the initial assessment, and to update it every time you change the product, but of course also every time the threat landscape evolves, you need to update your risk assessment. But you also need to document your risk assessment. So to be very transparent to your users, what risks are taken into account, which goes hand in hand with the documentation of the security environment. So what are your core assumptions? Do you think your product should only be used behind a firewall and not exposed directly to the internet? Then you should document it and be very clear about this assumptions to your users. Then support period. How long do you plan to carry out security updates for this product, and where in its life cycle is a product, so that your users can make an informed decision if they still want to purchase this product, or go to the next iteration, the next version of this product. And then, of course, you also need to inform your users about vulnerabilities that you fixed with your updates. So this doesn't mean you need to have this information directly with the update. You don't want to put your users at risk by releasing vulnerability information before everyone has a chance to update their product. But in a timely manner, you should also include the information, what vulnerabilities are fixed by update, so that everyone can make an informed decision if they want to install this update, or if they can tolerate the risk and wait with an update until they have suitable maintenance window. So that's it. We here again see the full life cycle again, with all the additional activities to really make the DevSecOps process out of a normal DevOps process. Yeah, I hope you learned something. If there are any questions, Alex, you monitor
Yes.
our Q&A section.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. So let us have a look. So we have some questions, starting with the first one, Sebastian,
Mhm.
from Maximilian. How can we access to the compliance wizard?
Mhm. Very good question. So currently the compliance wizard is completely integrated into our platform. So all the different checks that I showed you um, will be taken into account, and we mapped all the different requirements from standards like IEC 62443 or from the Cyber Resilience Act um, to our checks. And then we can directly show you where the platform detected a violation against these requirements.
Perfect, thank you. So next question from Felix. So the CRA doesn't apply to IoT devices that have no network access. What about NFC readers? Does that count?
Let me clarify. So Cyber Resilience Act applies to all products with digital elements. I think the RED directive, the Radio Equipment Directive, um, applies to all to all products with an antenna. But the cyber security requirements from EN 18031 are actually only focusing on devices that carry out some network or internet protocols over this radio connection. So if you have just an NFC, I think there is no like IP data uh, transferred between your RFID tag and or NFC tag and the reader. If this reader now also would have like a Wi-Fi connection with an IP connection to a server, then it would definitely also have to be compliant with the security requirements.
Okay, thank you. And next question from Sushil. What type of software needs a CE sign? For example, will Microsoft Word come with a CE in the future, or is it limited to software which controls a hardware like Windows or Linux?
Currently, it really makes a I would think in future or also usual software will have a CE sign, yes, if it is sold on the EU market. Because this product with digital elements really also applies to software solutions. And we see there's a harmonized standard, a vertical standard for key safes. And I think this is not only restricted to hardware key safes, but also to password managers that run on your Windows system. So that's make me think that also normal software will, and also we already see that apps and so on for your Android phone also will have to be compliant with the Cyber Resilience Act. Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. And we have one more question from Maximilian. How do we find out if there will be a vertical standard for our product?
Mm-hmm. So actually, there is a list in the legal documents from the Cyber Resilience Act. I think it is in Annex 1 or 2. There is a actual list of concrete product groups that will receive a vertical standard. It is just a handful. 99% of products on the market will fall into the default category and will not receive the vertical standard. So there only the horizontal standards will be applicable.
Perfect. So I think that's it. No more further questions. So yeah, we are at the end of the seminar. I hope you enjoyed it, and follow us for more online seminars on LinkedIn, and we are happy to connect with you. And yeah, have a great time, and see you. Bye bye from Team ONEKEY.
It was a pleasure. See you.